Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. Back in Talking with Tony, it's our first episode since the Academy Awards, and Dr. Evan Horton's our guest today, the superintendent of Cowboy County Schools. He thought he was coming on to talk March Madness. We're actually going to talk about the results of the Academy Awards. So I hope you saw the show, Evan. Hope you enjoyed it. Just totally kidding with you. We have you here for March Madness.
I was going to say, you got the wrong guy if we're talking Academy Awards. I don't even know when it was.
Now, I am wearing a Yankees jersey today because we're right here at baseball season, and I know you love your Braves, and I know you love Major League Baseball. There's something special about opening day and the opening week. Doesn't matter who you pull for, Evan. Everybody has hope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody starts with on a level playing field with the same amount of hope. The Oakland A's have as much hope as the New York Yankees or the Atlanta Braves or the LA Dodgers. So I'm excited to get it going tomorrow.
You know, it's funny you referenced Oakland because they're coming off such a miserable year and they don't really know what the future is and when they win and will they move to Vegas? What year will that be? Where will they play next year? Fresno, whoever. But I actually think that's a team to look out for maybe 2 or 3 years from now because they will have a ton of money to spend especially when they get to Las Vegas. They have got three starting pitchers out of the Yankees organization that I am very familiar with, and they are two of them. Sears and Medina are really good, and they got some young bats. So yeah, they're going to have their problems. Vegas has their over/under win total of 58.5. I would go over that this year, though. I mean, we're talking about still a Major League Baseball team. You play 162 games, and it's not like they, anybody on a given day. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Evan, in baseball, if your pitcher is doing well, can win.
Absolutely. When you're playing, 162 games, any given day you got a chance to win, and it'll be interesting to see what happens once they finally do get settled in the next probably 4 or 5 years out in Vegas. I am interested, like you, to see where they're going to play in the meantime. Um, Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating. Part of me is hoping that they remain where they are because I just like the tradition. I know the ballpark needs improvements. I get it. I really didn't want them leaving, Oakland anyway. I'm just kind of a guy that just likes. I like things to be when I first learned them. I like for them to stay like that. The whole when the Colts left Baltimore, that was weird for me, and it just things like that. I like the Houston Oilers, for example, and I love I think you get it because we're roughly the same age. All right, so I'm going to go with the Braves to win the World Series. So just going to get that out there right now. If I had to just ask you a team this year, and we know how good the Dodgers are supposed to be, and the Astros are always a power too, but I'm feeling it for the Braves this time. And in full disclosure, I picked them last year, and they let me down in the playoffs.
I mean, I like the Braves. A couple of things. Number one, got to stay healthy. Number two, the biggest question I have is what adjustment are they going to make after 2 years of being put out in the divisional series by their hated rival, the Phillies? What's the adjustment going to be? Now you can all day long say, that environment or whatnot doesn't have much to do with it, but the past 2 years, the Phillies have quite frankly outclassed them in the division series, and it wasn't even close. We just didn't have it going for us last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what the adjustment is. Like the fact that yesterday they signed Jesse Chavez again. But I hate the fact that I saw just a little while ago that Jackson Stevens, instead of accepting his outright assignment to AAA's elected free agency, good for him, but I hate to lose him because I thought he was going to be that long arm for us out of the bullpen. And they're over the course of a 162 game season, you're going to need that long guy to eat innings for you from time to time. So anyway, I hope it works out for him. I just hate to see us lose him.
Evan, when you and I are together on this, we are more informative in 28, 30-minute episodes than you get 2 hours on an ESPN show where those guys scream at each other. That is a valid, poignant point that you just made about how big that long man arm is for you in each Major League Baseball team, especially these days when we're in those situations where we have so many situational relievers. They say now you have to face three guys, but that's not always the case. If you finish off an inning, say you come in, see a guy, and then you're going to see somebody else when the next inning starts. someone, because of either a weather situation where it starts raining in the third inning and the starting pitcher can't come back, someone's going to have to give you 3-4 innings out of that bullpen at times. Maybe it's when the starting pitcher doesn't have his best stuff. And you were right. He was a great candidate to fill that role.
Well, now just the way the game is managed has changed with analytics and everything. A quality start used to be 7 innings. You used to expect to get 7 out of your starting pitcher and go 100 pitches. Well, now, I mean, 5 innings, that's about max for a major league starter. So especially early in the season when everybody's getting ramped up. So those guys that are able to eat innings for you, they're just invaluable. And and let me go back, eat innings and be competitive. It's one thing to take one for the team, and you're going to get, if you're getting blown out and you get run, go out there and give up 7 or 8 runs. It's another thing for a guy that can go out of the bullpen and give you 3 or 4 innings and not give up anything, or, limit the damage, so to speak. So it's going to be interesting to see, how that situation kind of evolves over the course of the season. It certainly is. And again, stay healthy. You got Chris Sale that we signed, who I'm really excited about, and he's rolling out throwing 96, the other day. But the last few years, there have been some injury concerns with him. He's like you and I, Tony. He's not getting any younger. But if he can continue to sustain that type of velocity and stay healthy, yeah, I mean, the sky may be the limit for those guys.
I'm sitting here smiling because I didn't know if I'd get into this or not, but when you said Sale, my viewers know my book right now is #1 on 2 different charts on Amazon, which I am extremely grateful about. It's called 6 Weeks This Summer. And there is a part in that book where Chris Sale is going to stay healthy this year because he is a starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves in this book. It's a fictional book, as is Matt Trucks, who on his downtime coaches at Northgate and teaches at Northgate and coaches at Northgate also volleyball. And Matt Trucks is given an interview before game 7 with a 14-year-old aspiring journalist. And he talks about how awesome it is that Chris Sale has overcome injury problems the last few years and has been a key contributor to the Braves' success. So even though that's a fictional book and all, that's why Chris Sale has to have a big year and remain healthy, because Matt Trucks, whose grandfather, Virgil Fire Trucks was his name, did pitch in the World Series, went 1-1, has a ring as a coach, has a ring as a player, is one of the starting pitchers for the Atlanta Braves. And those of you watching in from the Newnan area will need to know that John Perkison, who coaches out at East Coweta, is also another starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves in the 2024 in my book, 6 Weeks This Summer. Let's talk brackets. 12 of my 16 teams survived to make it to the Sweet 16, despite what was absolutely the worst performance I've ever had in the first round of a bracket contest in the NCAA tournament. 7 of my 8 Elite Eights are alive. Kentucky is out. Kentucky, Baylor, Auburn, and Brigham Young were the casualties. People in my neighborhood are still trying to get over the Auburn debacle, but if you can't make free throws, 1-and-1s in clutch, and then you play stupid basketball and you commit turnovers with 2 minutes to go, up 4, going 1-on-2, you deserve to lose. Couple all of that with the fact that Chad Baker-Mazara's foolishness got him ejected in the first early on in the contest. You deserve to lose because he's a great foul shooter. He's a good ball player altogether. So it'll be interesting to see the direction these Auburn players go in. Several have decisions. Katie Johnson's already entered the transfer portal to play his final year somewhere else. Tell me first, before we talk any specific teams, how's your bracket look at?
Would you believe I didn't even fill one out this year? I got busy last week and forgot to fill one out before the tournament started. Didn't get a chance to fill one out before the tournament started. So I didn't even fill one out. However, I'm living vicariously through both of my daughters who have filled out brackets. And safe to say that guessing is obviously a good strategy because both of their brackets are okay.
Now, maybe we need to give them a little more credit than the fact that they live with a guy who's extremely knowledgeable with the game. So they've probably picked up on some things and they've seen some teams play throughout the year.
Yeah, possibly. They might have picked up on a few things. They're big North Carolina fans. After we watched North Carolina take down NC State a couple weeks ago in the conference tournament final,
That's
there.
a problem, though, for the Sweet 16.
It
That
is.
creates a little bit of chaos in your house. They have to go with dad's alma mater.
Yeah, I don't know. I of course they're big Alabama fans because I went there, but I
Uh-huh.
also think that they're pretty realistic. I don't know. Alabama offensively can match up with anybody in the country. They can play with anyone offensively. Defensively is going to be the key for them, and how they begin to handle other teams' physicality and size. Now, you saw them against Grand Canyon. They did a good job of handling Grand Canyon's physicality. But Grand Canyon is not North Carolina. And they're going to, as they run up against the North Carolinas potentially and the Purdue's maybe down the stretch if it gets to that, which they played Purdue earlier this year and played them pretty tough.
Oh yeah.
How are they going to handle the size of those particular teams and their style of play?
2 points I want to make. Of course, I grew up in the Carolinas, and I grew up going to the old Carmichael Auditorium and then the Dean Smith Center, and got disappointed so many times. It's the losses we remember more, the tough losses. I was in the Omni on a Thursday night in 1984. Michael Jordan played his last game, and the Tar Heels kept fouling Steve Alford at the end of the game, and Indiana kept doing a great job getting the ball in his hands. And he made 9 out of 10 free throws. And North Carolina, who had the best team in the country, and yeah, Kenny Smith was hurt that night, was the point guard, ball handler, and that was problematic also. But they lost. In '83, they lost to Georgia in the Elite Eight. Yeah, they went in '82, but I don't even hurt. I remember the hard, tough losses as a kid instead of the big wins. I think you can probably even relate to that.
Yeah.
Second point is I want to make, and you can follow that after this. Last year, I was so high on the University of Alabama, as so many others were as well, and you were concerned about San Diego State, and I was really not, and you were right. It's sometimes when you believe you have the best team, you don't necessarily win the national championship that year. Maybe you win it the following year or the next year. Vince Dooley told me his Georgia Bulldogs that won the national championship in 1980, he says, they wouldn't have beat my 1982 team, but we played in the so-called championship game in the Sugar Bowl, and we lost, Penn State. They made one more play than us. But he says, my 82 team was better than my 1980 team. It's the same thing in the NCAA tournament, Evan. It's about matchups. And sometimes a team we thought was going to win the previous year finds a way to get it done and win the national championship. Do I believe Alabama's going to win the national championship? Not necessarily. But last year I did, and I wouldn't be totally surprised. I think they've got a great coach. They've got depth. They can play a lot of kids, and they have about 6 different guys that can shoot the three. If they can, and you're right, match up anybody offensively. If they can find some defense down low, don't burn up too many fouls, they can play with anybody. There's a reason why Carolina is only 4-point favorites over in this contest. That's not many points. So Bama's getting a lot of respect in that game.
Yeah, they are, and to your point, foul trouble is going to tell the tale. They can't afford to get Nelson in foul trouble. I will say the other thing, you mentioned San Diego State last year. I was on with you this week last year and was very concerned about San Diego State because of something that I think is very underrated now in the college game, but it's more of a factor than anything. Age. You look at the teams that give people fits in the NCAA tournament now with the transfer portal and the way things are able to work now. It is teams with these 24 and 25-year-olds that are graduate transfers that have gone and they've transferred into maybe a new system. Looking at a young team like a Kentucky, that's a great example of a team that was, by all accounts, going to make a Final Four run with a bunch of freshmen. And lo and behold, they ran up against a team that was much more physically mature, that made plays in Oakland to put them out. That's something that you got to kind of look at now. That's what happened to Alabama last year. San Diego State, absolutely, they made plays that they need to make, but that was a veteran team that was physically manhandled Alabama. So, and let's face it, you look at some of the games that are played in the tournament and called in the tournament versus the way they're officiated in the regular season. it's night and day. They're letting teams get away with things in the tournament that they never allow teams to get away with during the regular season from a physicality standpoint. So that's something that I think is not talked about enough. In relation to the teams that make the run. If you look at the makeups of those teams, yeah, it's often the one that's going to be the most veteran laden, that's going to be able to play to sustain that physicality over the course of 40 minutes and with the depth to be able to quite frankly, have a few cheap ones in there, few cheap fouls here and there. So it's fascinating to watch. Going to be interesting to see how it evolves kind of down the stretch.
Before I get you to pick the 8 16 games, did you catch any of the North Carolina Michigan State game this
Very,
past week?
very little, very little.
I Izzo did a fabulous job. His team struggled throughout the year, and many believe they needed that win in the Big Ten, their first Big Ten game, just to get in. And then clobbered Mississippi State and got a 12-point lead on North Carolina, 26-14. And I love a coach who can get his team to peak at the right time. Carolina really had to turn up their level of play, and they made a tremendous run at the end of the first half. And that carried on the second half. And remember, they were playing in their backyard, which helps as well. And that's going to help some of these teams this weekend, too, to be playing, I think, geographically and have the home crowd. So there's also that factor, too. And I think that plays part of a veteran team as well, getting those guys to subscribe the right word, maybe not, but to perform at their best when it matters the most.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It's all about, and look, we'll go back to the Alabama example. They hadn't played defense all year. They've been awful on the defensive end. But if they can find it within themselves right now to peak on that end of the floor, they're dangerous, So it's a great example of when it matters. Get the best out of your team when it matters. And Izzo is a master at that. There's so many others out there that do a great job. And home court advantage. Playing close to home is a big deal, which neither Alabama or North Carolina are going to be doing this week.
Correct. I want you to pick one team, a game right off the bat with a team that will be playing in their backyard, the defending national champions, with a team that we're kind of getting accustomed to seeing them play in the tournament here because the went up against each other in the finals last year. But they're in Boston, UConn, and San Diego State.
You gotta go with UConn. I know that Hurley, he's trying to convince everybody that the whole deck's stacked against him and this and that and the other. That's great from a motivational standpoint, but until you knock them off, they're the favorite to win the whole thing. You got to go with UConn.
I completely agree with what you're saying about how he's playing it. Now, the second game is the game that should be just a classic. It's Illinois, who won the Big Ten tournament against Iowa State, who just what they did against Houston was almost unreal. And, that's how you beat Houston. You get out ahead of them early because sometimes they struggle to score. But what they did to make that Houston, who's just a tremendous defensive team, it was both sides of the ball. It was just a domination. So how do you see this Illinois versus Iowa State contest?
This one was probably the toughest one for me. I didn't know which way to go. I think I'm going to go with Illinois just because I really don't know why, Tony. Just because I like them more, quite honestly. I don't. Iowa State's had a good year. My buddy Steve Prohm was the head coach at Iowa State for a while. I can't pick Iowa State since Steve's not there, since he's back at Murray State now. So I'm going with Illinois.
Okay. Clemson and Arizona playing out in LA. Arizona people travel very well.
They do, and I think that helps them. I also think Arizona's better, quite frankly. Clemson, 6th seed, had a great run up to this point. I don't see them beating Arizona. I just don't.
And Alabama and North Carolina also in LA. We're going to let Evan go here in just a little bit because he's got a flight to catch out to LA, back to Crimson Tide. He certainly needs to be there. I wanted you so bad to get to the Final Four last year if Bama made it. It's time for you to pick that. This is where my black bracket is clean here. I have Arizona defeating North Carolina in this bracket in the regional. Do you have Bama going to the Elite Eight?
My heart says Alabama, into the Elite Eight for the first time since 2004 and only the second time in school history. My head says North Carolina because North Carolina is a blue blood and they're always in the Elite Eight or the Final Four. But I'm going with Alabama. I'm gonna call on them to shock the world for me tomorrow night at 9:39 Eastern.
I love it. I would assume that you have UConn moving past Illinois, and which probably will be very entertaining. It would be entertaining, I think, even with Iowa State.
Yeah, I think it will. It'll be incredibly entertaining. Again, until somebody knocks them off, though, you got to go with them.
Okay.
They've been there.
And Bama is looking for that Final Four trip, and the hurdle will be Arizona. In your opinion, here, if they've just coming off a victory over North Carolina, I would think they'd go with a tremendous amount of confidence. And Arizona is a team that, when I visited with you earlier, I told you that I kind of had my eyes on to win the national championship because they were winning games on the road. And that's a formula that I look for. A lot of people talk Ken Palm rankings, and that's fine to do that. I get it. I like to see teams that have won at difficult places during the year on the road. Arizona, to me, checks that box.
Yeah.
Bama plays in the SEC, and even though the SEC is not performing to its level we had hoped for, and I still think that helps you along the way. I think the SEC was so deep. So here's the question for you: the battles of the Alabama and Arizona, the two A's here. Who do you like?
As much as I want to see it, I don't see Alabama beating Arizona. You mentioned that non-conference schedule and the tough games. Alabama played Purdue. Alabama played some others non-conference. The difference between Alabama and Arizona, though, Alabama didn't win any of those. I think they were 0-6, non-conference against those tough quad one type teams. And I think, whereas it may prepare you, if you haven't won any, you're not prepared to win those. So I think you got to go with Arizona. As much as I hope I'm wrong, I pray I'm wrong, because I'd love to see Alabama get into the Final Four, like your Auburn Tigers and Bruce Pearl did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I have my reservations about Oates. The whole Miller thing last year, I just don't. He said some things that I think he wished he could take back. I mean, we all make mistakes. I don't know if that situation was handled properly. I didn't really care for him going into the Yale locker room twice the other day. One thing I do respect is, since he became head coach there, the schedule that Bama has played. You referenced, Purdue. You think about playing Houston back-to-back years, the Gonzagas and all. Their Bama is so battle-tested that I wouldn't mind it. I don't have the hatred as an Auburn Tiger that a lot of people have for Alabama, and I wouldn't mind it at all. And it might very well happen. They've got an excellent chance. We've talked about the keys. They use their fouls smartly, and they don't get in foul trouble, especially down low. We'll see. They showed a lot of grit to me against Grand Canyon when they came back they were down 58-55, and I believe they had a 5 or 6 point trip. I believe it might have been a 6 point trip that they just kept getting the rebounds off the missed free throws and shots, and then they took over after that.
And look, I would be so incredibly confident that they would make it this year if they had one player back from last year's team. I meant to mention this earlier. They had Bediako back. I think he would bring such an added element of depth to their bigs. And he's the missing piece. I hate that he's gone.
But something about Sears, there's just something about him, and he's one of those players that wants the ball in his hands. He's a difference maker. Pressure does not bust the pipe with that kid, and he will take the ball for 40 minutes of the game.
He willed them to victory the other night. When you referenced coming down the stretch, the last 2 minutes of the game was the Mark Sears show, much like the previous 38 minutes.
Let's go through this Dallas region pretty quick. NC State and Marquette. You like Marquette here?
Yeah, the run-ins for NC State. Great run. They were on the border, possibly making a coaching change. They win the ACC tournament, get in. Now they're in the Sweet 16. But Cinderella slipper, it comes falling off.
This is one I'm most looking forward to on Friday. It's Duke and Houston. Houston is one of my Final Four teams. I had them beating Kentucky, which is my only Elite Eight casualty. But I fear that Duke is finding their game a little bit. The critics have been on them, and they have responded with 2 very impressive games in the tournament. Like I said, if Houston falls behind early, it's problematic for them. I do believe playing in Dallas, even though that's not like just riding down the street from Newnan to Hogansville. I still believe that Houston's going to have a solid fan showing. Duke people will travel also, and I think Houston survives.
I think Houston does as well. I think Houston can beat you in a number of ways. And one thing they do better than anybody, they can win ugly. So I do like Houston.
They overcame 4 guys fouling out in the
Yes.
game against Texas A&M, and 3 key contributors fouled out. In Detroit, Gonzaga takes on Purdue.
You got to go with Purdue. So again, Purdue, their size. Here's the thing, though, and I think I said it last time we talked about Purdue. Watch their free throw shooting. If their free throw shooting gets any worse, it could be a problem for them.
Yeah, no doubt. And Gonzaga, they were facing a beat-up Kansas team, but took complete control in the second half after a first half that was going back and forth. They took complete control. He's got some depth with that Gonzaga team as well. Creighton takes on Tennessee. I have Tennessee making it to the national championship game, but I am concerned about the matchup with Creighton because if you've watched the Final Four, watched the March Madness in the past, it's not always the best team. It's about matchups. This may be a difficult matchup for the Vols. I do have them moving forward, but I am concerned.
I have them moving forward too, but I think it's going to be a nail biter, and I think Creighton presents tons of issues for Tennessee just by way of style of play. But I got to go with Tennessee. I like Rick Barnes and my old college coach Greg Polinsky sitting on the sidelines with the UT Volunteers. So hopefully they get to where you think they're going.
Okay, so the Vols. You have to pick it right now. The Vols, and I don't want to take any team that shoots foul shots like Purdue does.
No, me neither. Eventually that comes back and bites you. 2 things that are going to bite you in a tournament: turnovers and not making your free throws. Eventually that'll get them. However, I think they do just enough to get past Tennessee.
Okay. And you're right. The foul shooting. Auburn had one of the best foul shooting teams in the country. 2 guys shooting over 80% missed front ends of 1-and-1s. The pressure is immense on these guys in situations, and it will do certain things to them. All right. So you're with me on Tennessee then.
Yeah.
Okay. And now Marquette and back to Dallas, Marquette and Houston with your bracket there.
I like Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to simply put, Houston finds ways to win. They also find ways to get behind, but they find ways to win.
So you essentially, unless I missed something, have the same Final Four I had when I started my tournament with UConn, Arizona, Houston, and Tennessee, correct?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's amazing. That's what I had when I started. And now you've sort of this makes me feel like I'm on to something special here. Now I have Arizona facing Tennessee in the national championship. That's where I'm going to differ from a lot of people because of the Connecticut factor. Are you on Connecticut there?
Yeah, I am. Again, there's something to be said for having been there and done that, and no other team in the tournament at this point has. So until you knock them off, they're the national champ.
Nah, I understand. And now, did you have Tennessee going to the finals to face UConn, or are you all on Houston?
Oh man, that'll be a tough one. That will be a slugfest. You know what? They'll go with the SEC. I'd love to see Tennessee in it.
Okay, well, that's who I have winning the national championship is Tennessee, and that was not easy to do because I'm not really a big fan of the Vols. I don't mind an SEC team winning though, but that would mean on your bracket where I've got them beating Arizona on mine. That means they have to beat Connecticut on yours.
Yeah, they would have to beat Connecticut. And here's the deal. If Tennessee was to win, we'll never hear the end of it. My word, it will be awful for all of us in SEC country.
Brian Smith, the East Coweta father, it would be my biggest problem with that, I believe, are the Piscotas. You remember the Piscotas from your Northgate time, the Northgate days. One other thing, Evan, how was it like to be featured in the book? You can't say anything negative. You wouldn't say negative anything, but you and Dr. Kemp and Miles and Hap Hines go to Augusta National in the second round of 2023. That's the day the big storm came and the trees fell down around 18 tee box, and Brooks Koepka had the lead. And you guys are like telling Miles, we got to get out of here. But then Miles runs into this girl that he hasn't seen in 10 years that gave him a tour of Stanford University when he was 17 years old. Kind of cool to be at Augusta National on such an interesting day, except when the weather got bad there, huh?
Yeah, I'm glad to be in the book, but I don't know what it is about me and storms, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Thanks for being a good sport and coming on today. I'm curious to see how we do. I think we're going to do pretty good, actually. That's the hunch that I have. I hope, look, I'm looking for the knock on wood part, but that's the hunch that I have.
I think we'll do fine. A lot of good teams left in this thing, but I think we're going to be all right.
All right, Evan, thank you so much for your time.
You got it. See ya.
Folks, that's all the time we have for Talking with Tony. Thank you so much for Evan Horton, who's in Newnan, Georgia, as Dr. Evan Horton in Newnan, Georgia, as well as Jake Barton is in Newnan. I'm Tony Jones in Auburn, Alabama. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.